Rain hammered the neon-soaked streets of downtown Manhattan like bullets from a silenced gun. A tiny figure in a tattered coat clutched a worn, one-armed porcelain doll. Its painted smile cracked and faded. When the orphan girl slipped into the Shadowthorn Tower and placed that broken doll into the mafia boss, the entire lobby fell deathly silent. Then the untouchable king dropped to his knees, tears carving paths down his scarred face. The storm had turned New York into a raging beast. 8-year-old Sophia Vale stumbled through flooded sidewalks, her thin frame battered by icy wind. Orphaned at 4, she had survived on the streets longer than most adults could imagine. The porcelain doll, the last gift from her mother, was her only companion. Its missing arm, a constant reminder of everything she had lost. To be alone in this city was dangerous. To be alone during a flash flood was suicidal. Her small hand tightened around the doll as thunder shook the buildings. She needed shelter, any shelter. Through the chaos of blaring horns and pounding rain, Sophia heard the deep, resonant hum of revolving doors and the faint melody of a classical piano drifting from within a towering skyscraper. Warm golden light spilled onto the wet pavement, carrying the faint scent of rich mahogany and expensive cigars. Desperation overrode fear. She pushed open the heavy doors of the Shadowthorn Tower. The sudden hush of the opulent lobby wrapped around her like a forbidden embrace. Marble floors gleamed under massive chandeliers. She paused, water dripping from her soaked hair, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tried to make sense of the vast, echoing space. She had no idea she had just stepped into the heart of a brutal empire. Less than 50 feet away, Viktor Draven was descending the grand staircase, flanked by 6 armed shadows. He moved like a predator, who owned not only the building, but the souls of everyone inside it. Tall and powerfully built, Viktor was the undisputed head of the Draven Syndicate, the most feared criminal organization on the East Coast. His tailored obsidian suit hugged his frame, and a sleek black Patek Philippe watch glinted at his wrist, a symbol of the immense power he had seized after his father's death. His men had just finished dealing with a traitor in the penthouse suite upstairs. Viktor's hands still carried the faint metallic scent of blood. His sharp, ice-gray eyes scanned the lobby for threats. He trusted no one and forgave nothing. "Bring the convoy around," Viktor ordered, his voice a low, ordered, commanding growl that demanded instant obedience. "And burn the entire Rossi warehouse district before dawn. No survivors." His underboss, Marco, nodded. "Consider it done, boss." Viktor took another step toward the exit, his mind already calculating the next moves in an all-out war with the rival Rossi family. And then it happened. Sophia, disoriented by the sudden shift from roaring storm to echoing silence, took a hesitant step forward. Her wet shoes slipped on the polished marble. She stumbled, the porcelain doll flying from her small hands as she tried to catch herself. Instead of hitting the cold floor, she collided with a wall of unyielding muscle. The doll clattered loudly across the marble, the sharp sound echoing like a gunshot through the cavernous lobby. In an instant, the atmosphere transformed from refined luxury to lethal tension. The unmistakable clicks of multiple guns being drawn filled the air. Viktor's men formed a protective circle around their boss, weapons trained on the tiny, soaking wet child who had dared to breach their perimeter. "Step back," Marco barked, finger tight on the trigger. Sophia froze, heart hammering in her tiny chest. She couldn't see the guns, but she could feel the sudden shift in the air, the heavy presence of dangerous men, ready to kill. Terror gripped her, but she didn't cry. She had learned long ago that tears changed nothing on the streets. Viktor reacted on pure instinct, his powerful hand already reaching to shove the intruder away. But as his fingers brushed her wet coat, his gaze dropped to the porcelain doll lying at his feet. Time stopped. The doll's cracked face stared up at him, one arm missing. The exact same doll he had given to his own daughter 10 years ago. Right before the Rossi family's ambush stole her from him forever. Viktor's breath caught violently in his throat, the cold, merciless mafia don, a man who had ordered the deaths of countless enemies without a flicker of emotion, suddenly looked shattered. His icy grey eyes widened with raw, devastating recognition. The girl, the doll, the scar hidden just beneath her left ear that he had memorized from 1,000 hidden photographs. His men stared in confusion. "Boss?" Marco asked, voice tight. "Give the order." But Viktor didn't hear him. His entire world had narrowed to the small orphan standing before him, the child he had searched for in secret for a decade, the child he had sworn to protect from the shadows of his own darkness. He slowly dropped to one knee, then both, right there, on the cold marble floor, in front of his armed men and stunned staff. Tears, real, unbroken tears, filled his eyes as he gently picked up the broken porcelain doll with trembling hands. "Mine," he whispered, voice cracking with a decade of buried pain and obsession. The single word sent a shockwave through the entire lobby. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Mine. Viktor Draven, the man whose name alone made hardened killers flinch, remained on his knees before the tiny orphan. His powerful shoulders trembled as he cradled the broken porcelain doll against his chest. The lobby, once filled with the quiet power of the Draven syndicate, was now frozen in stunned silence. 6 elite bodyguards stood with guns still drawn, eyes wide with disbelief at the sight of their ruthless boss, brought to his knees by a child. Sophia stood completely still, her small body tense. She could feel the shift in the room, the sudden absence of immediate violence. The man in front of her smelled of rain, expensive cologne, and something darker, like smoke and blood. His voice, when he had whispered that single word, had been raw in a way that scared her more than the guns. Marco stepped forward, confusion thick in his voice. "Boss, what the hell is this? She's just a street kid. Give the word and we'll holster your weapons," Viktor commanded, his voice low but carrying lethal authority. Now, the men hesitated for half a second before obeying. The sound of guns sliding back into holsters echoed through the marble hall. Viktor slowly rose to his full, imposing height, but his eyes never left Sophia. His large hand, still holding the doll, reached out with surprising gentleness and rested on her wet shoulder. "You're safe now," he murmured, his tone completely transformed. No longer the cold dawn, but something deeper, almost broken. "No one is going to hurt you." Sophia's voice came out small but steady. I just wanted to get out of the rain. I didn't mean to bump into you, mister. You can keep the doll if you want. She's broken anyway." Viktor's breath hitched. That voice, the same quiet resilience he had heard in old recordings of his daughter. He dropped to one knee again, so he was eye level with her, his massive frame somehow making the gesture protective rather than threatening. "What's your name, little one?" he asked softly. "Sophia Vale." The name hit him like a bullet. Vale, his daughter's middle name, the surname he had erased from every record 10 years ago to protect her from his enemies. His hand trembled as he gently brushed a strand of wet hair from her face, revealing the small, crescent-shaped scar just beneath her left ear, the scar from the night the Rossi family had tried to wipe out his bloodline. Tears welled in Viktor's eyes once more. This wasn't coincidence. This was the girl he had spent a decade hunting in secret, while the world believed his only child had died in that explosion. Marco stared, speechless. The rest of the security team exchanged uneasy glances. Their boss, the man who had personally executed traitors without blinking, was crying over a street orphan and a broken toy. Viktor stood up, sweeping Sophia into his arms with effortless strength, cradling her against his chest, as if she were made of glass. She stiffened at first, but the warmth of his coat and the steady beat of his heart slowly calmed her. "Marco, bring the armored car. Clear the entire block. No one follows us." His voice had returned to its commanding edge, but it carried a new, dangerous edge of possession. "And get Dr. Lang on the line. I want a full medical team waiting at the penthouse." Sophia pulled back slightly, confusion and fear mixing in her wide eyes. "Where are you taking me? I don't have any family. I'm alone." Viktor looked down at her, his grey eyes burning with 10 years of guilt, regret, and a fierce, all-consuming obsession. "You're not alone anymore. You never were. I've been looking for you for a very long time, Sophia." As they stepped out into the storm, the convoy of blacked-out armored SUVs waited like silent predators. Viktor carried her into the lead vehicle, wrapping her in his own cashmere coat. The door sealed shut with a heavy thud, cutting off the chaos of the city. Inside the luxurious, bulletproof interior, Sophia clutched the front of his shirt, her small fingers trembling. "Why are you crying? Do you know my mom?" Viktor's jaw tightened. He poured warm, hot chocolate from a console warmer and pressed the cup gently into her hands. "Drink this first. It'll warm you up." She took a cautious sip, her eyes never leaving his face. The car pulled smoothly into the rain-slicked streets, surrounded by armed escorts. Viktor leaned closer, his voice dropping to a haunted whisper. "Your mother, she was the bravest woman I ever knew. And your father, he failed to protect you both that night. But I swear on everything I am, no one will ever touch you again." Sophia didn't understand the weight behind his words, but something in his voice, the raw pain mixed with iron resolve, told her that her life had just changed forever. She had handed a broken doll to a monster in the storm, and the monster had recognized his own daughter. The armored Maybach glided through the storm like a ghost, rain hammering its reinforced windows. Sophia sat nestled in the plush leather seat, still wrapped in Viktor's oversized cashmere coat that smelled of cedarwood, gun oil, and something unmistakably powerful. She clutched the warm cup of hot chocolate, her small fingers tracing the rim as she stole glances at the imposing man beside her. Viktor Draven watched her with an intensity that bordered on painful. His grey eyes, usually cold as steel, were now filled with a storm of emotions he had buried for 10 long years. The broken porcelain doll rested on the seat between them, like a sacred artifact. "Why did you help me?" Sophia asked quietly, her voice barely above the low hum of the engine. "People don't help kids like me, not without wanting something." Viktor's jaw clenched. He poured himself a glass of aged whiskey, but barely touched it. "Because I owe you more than you can imagine, Sophia. More than anyone should ever owe a child." The car turned onto a private road, leading toward the heart of Manhattan's most exclusive district. Marco sat in the front passenger seat, occasionally glancing back through the rearview mirror, still processing the sight of his boss on his knees in the lobby. Sophia shifted uncomfortably. The men with guns, they were going to shoot me, weren't they? Viktor reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a damp strand of hair behind her ear. "They didn't understand who you were. No one will ever make that mistake again. You're under my protection now." "Protection?" she echoed, a hint of street-smart suspicion creeping into her tone. "Like a bodyguard. I've seen men like you on the streets. You're not the nice kind." A faint, pained smile touched Viktor's lips. "No, I'm not. I'm the kind of man who burns cities to keep what's his safe." He paused, choosing his words carefully. 10 years ago, I lost everything that mattered. My wife, your mother, was killed in an attack meant for me. The Rossi family wanted to destroy me, by destroying my world. Sophia's eyes widened. "My mother? You knew her?" Viktor nodded, his voice growing heavier. "Elena Vale. She was brilliant, kind, and far too good for my darkness. She tried to leave this life to protect you. I let her go, thinking distance would keep you both safe. I was wrong." The car interior felt smaller as the weight of his confession settled between them. Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating Viktor's sharp features, the faint scar running through his left eyebrow, the hard line of his jaw that had sent lesser men running. "They took you from the wreckage," he continued, his hand unconsciously tightening into a fist. "I thought you were dead. I buried an empty coffin while I hunted every Rossi soldier I could find. But I never stopped looking. Private investigators, shell companies, ghost accounts. I watched over you from the shadows for years without you ever knowing." Sophia stared at him, processing the impossible. "You're saying, you're my father?" Viktor's eyes glistened again. "Yes. and I failed you in every way a man can fail his child. But that ends tonight. The Maybach descended into a private underground garage beneath the Shadowthorn Tower. A fortress disguised as luxury residences. Heavy steel gates slammed shut behind them with finality. Armed guards stood at every entrance, their postures snapping to attention as Viktor stepped out, lifting Sophia effortlessly into his arms once more. As they rode the private elevator to the penthouse, Marco finally spoke. "Boss, the Rossis are still moving. They heard about the warehouse hits. This could start a full war." "Let them come," Viktor replied coldly, his arms tightening protectively around Sophia. "They took my daughter once. They won't live to try again." The elevator doors opened directly into a breathtaking penthouse, suspended high above the noun city. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a dizzying view of Manhattan's glittering skyline, now partially obscured by the raging storm. Heated marble floors, original artwork worth millions, and subtle scents of sandalwood and fresh linen filled the space. Sophia's eyes widened at the sheer luxury. "This is your house?" "Our house now," Viktor corrected softly. He set her down on a massive sectional sofa and knelt once again so they were eye level. "You'll stay here. You'll have everything you need. Clothes, food, safety. Doctors will check on you soon. And tomorrow we'll talk more about your mother, and about the life you were meant to have." Sophia hugged the porcelain doll tightly to her chest. Despite the warmth and safety surrounding her, a flicker of unease stirred. This man was powerful, dangerous, and he claimed her as his own. But after years of sleeping in alleys and trusting no one, part of her desperately wanted to believe him. Yet something in the back of her mind whispered a warning. Men like Viktor Draven didn't just cry over lost daughters. They waged wars, and wars always demanded blood. The penthouse lights cast a soft, golden glow across the expansive living room, as Viktor sat across from Sophia, on the floor, refusing any distance between them. A private chef had already delivered warm soup and fresh bread, but Sophia barely touched it, her attention fixed on the man who claimed to be her father. Viktor ran a hand through his dark hair, the weight of 10 lost years pressing down on him. "I know this is too much, too fast, but you deserve the truth, all of it." Sophia nodded slowly, still clutching the porcelain doll. "Tell me about my mother." Viktor's eyes softened with a rare, aching tenderness. "Elena was a pianist. She played at the most exclusive venues in the city before she met me. I was already rising in the syndicate, but she saw something worth saving behind the violence. We fell in love in secret. When she became pregnant with you, she begged me to leave that life. I promised I would. After one last job." He paused, pouring himself another drink, but setting it aside untouched. "The Rossi family learned about her. They saw her as my weakness. On the night you were born, they ambushed us in the hospital parking garage. Elena died shielding you. I held her as she took her last breath, begging me to protect our daughter." Sophia's small hand reached out instinctively, resting on his knee. The gesture nearly broke him again. "I thought I had lost you both in the explosion that followed," Viktor continued, voice rough. "The car bomb was meant for me, but you survived. Barely. A nurse who owed me a favor smuggled you out and placed you into the system under a false name. I spent years believing you were gone. When I finally discovered you were alive, you had already been moved between foster homes and streets. Every time I got close, the Rossis would catch wind and force me to pull back. I couldn't risk them finding you. So you watched me," Sophia whispered. "Every step," Viktor admitted. "Anonymous donations to the shelters you stayed in, private tutors who posed as volunteers. I paid off gangs to keep certain territories safe without you ever knowing. I even funded that art program you loved 3 years ago, the one with the painting teacher who said you had your mother's hands." Sophia's eyes widened in shock. "That was you?" Viktor nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I couldn't be your father in the light, so I became your guardian in the shadows. I swore on your mother's grave that I would keep you safe from my world. But the storm tonight, it forced my hand. The Rossis have grown bolder. They're looking for any leverage against me, and I won't let them touch you again." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, worn photograph, the only one he had kept close for a decade. It showed a smiling Elena holding a newborn Sophia. "This is all I had left of you both," he said, handing it to her. "Until tonight, when you handed me that doll, the same doll I gave your mother the day we found out she was pregnant with you." Tears finally slipped down Sophia's cheeks as she traced the faces in the photo. "I don't remember her, or you. I only remember being hungry and scared, and alone." The confession shattered something deep inside Viktor. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her as she cried. The first time in years she had allowed herself to break in front of another person. "I know, little one. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life making up for every single day I wasn't there. You'll never be alone again. You'll have the best education, the finest doctors, everything your mother dreamed for you. But more than that, you'll have a father who would burn this entire city to ash before letting anyone hurt you." Outside, the storm continued to rage, mirroring the war brewing in the streets below. Marco entered quietly, speaking in a low voice. "Boss, the Rossis hit 2 of our supply lines. They're getting desperate. They know something shifted tonight." Viktor's expression hardened instantly. The loving father replaced by the merciless Don in a heartbeat. "Let them come. Tell the captains to prepare. If they want war, I'll give them one they'll never forget." He looked back at Sophia, his voice softening again. "This world is ugly, Sophia. I never wanted you in it. But now that you're here, I won't hide the truth from you anymore. You are a Draven, and no one takes what belongs to us." Sophia leaned against him, exhaustion finally winning after the long night. As her eyes grew heavy, one final thought lingered in her mind. This man was her father, a king of darkness who had cried real tears for her. But kings like him always had enemies, and those enemies would now be looking for the little girl who had brought the ruthless boss to his knees. She had found shelter from the storm, but she had walked straight into the eye of a much deadlier one. For the next 3 days, Sophia existed in a world that felt like a beautiful dream and a golden cage at the same time. The Shadowthorn penthouse stretched across the entire top floor of the tower, suspended hundreds of feet above the chaotic streets of Manhattan. Heated Italian marble floors warmed her bare feet as she explored room after room. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the city skyline, now calm after the storm, but still humming with distant danger. Viktor Draven treated her with a terrifying reverence that bordered on obsession. He rarely left her side. She would wake in the middle of the night to the sound of his measured footsteps pacing the hardwood floors of the grand living room, his presence a constant, protective shadow. He barely slept, choosing instead to watch over her from the corner armchair while she rested. Every need was anticipated before she could voice it. A private Michelin-starred chef prepared her favorite meals, warm chocolate chip pancakes in the morning, homemade tomato soup at night. Racks of soft, luxurious clothes in her exact size appeared overnight, all in gentle colors with no rough tags. A team of doctors had examined her thoroughly, treating old scars and malnutrition with quiet efficiency. But the true heart of the penthouse was the music room Viktor had prepared for her. A gleaming Steinway grand piano stood by the windows, and shelves held every children's book and art supply imaginable. He would sit for hours in silence, eyes closed, listening as she tentatively played simple melodies her mother had once taught her. "You have her hands," he would say softly, voice thick with emotion, "and her strength." Despite the overwhelming comfort, Sophia felt the invisible walls closing in. The building was on total lockdown. Private elevators required biometric scans. Armed men patrolled every floor below. She was safe, safer than she had ever been, but she was also trapped in a world of silk and shadows. On the evening of the 3rd day, Viktor sat with her on the massive terrace overlooking the city, a cashmere blanket draped over her shoulders. The air was cool and crisp. Below them, the streets looked like a distant painting, far removed from the harsh reality she had known. "Why do those men want to hurt you?" Sophia asked, swinging her legs from the oversized chair. Viktor stared out at the glittering lights, his expression darkening. Because I took everything from them. Power, money, territory. The Rossis built their empire on fear and betrayal. I built mine on blood and loyalty. They've been trying to destroy me for years. Now that they sense weakness, they'll come harder. Weakness? Sophia tilted her head. You, Viktor said simply, turning to look at her with that fierce, possessive gaze. They don't know about you yet, but if they find out I have a daughter, they will stop at nothing to use you against me. He reached out and gently brushed her cheek. I would burn the entire city before I let them touch a single hair on your head. Sophia leaned into his touch, despite the quiet fear in her chest. Part of her craved this. The safety, the attention, the father she had never known. But another part, the street-smart survivor, whispered warnings. Viktor was kind to her, but she had seen the way his men looked at him, the way the city seemed to hold its breath when he spoke. That night, as she lay in the enormous canopy bed, she heard Viktor speaking in hushed, lethal tones on the phone in the next room. Double the guards on every entrance. If any Rossi soldier so much as breathes near this tower, I want his head on my desk by sunrise. She is everything. Fail her, and you fail me. His obsession was suffocating in its intensity. He tracked her every movement through discreet cameras and guards. He personally tasted her food before she ate. He read her bedtime stories, with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a man rumored to have ended dozens of lives. Yet beneath the luxury, the war outside was escalating. Sirens wailed more frequently in the distance. Viktor's phone never stopped ringing. The Rossi family was tearing the city apart, searching for leverage, growing more desperate with every warehouse that burned. Sophia hugged the repaired porcelain doll tightly to her chest. She had been given a kingdom, but kingdoms built on blood and obsession always came with a price. And somewhere, in the shadows of New York, the Rossi family was beginning to ask dangerous questions about the mysterious girl, the Draven king, now guarded with his life. On the fourth evening, the fragile peace of the penthouse shattered. Viktor was in the middle of reading Sophia a bedtime story when Marco burst through the double doors, his face grim. The underboss's breathing was ragged, his usual composure cracked. "Boss, we have a problem," Marco said urgently. "The Rosses just hit the East River docks. They intercepted a major shipment of weapons and cash. It's a bloodbath down there. Our men are pinned down and taking heavy losses." Viktor's expression turned lethal in an instant. He closed the storybook gently and stood up, his broad shoulders tensing like a predator, ready to strike. "They're getting bolder," he growled. "They know something is different. They're testing me." Sophia sat up in bed, clutching the blanket. "Are you leaving?" Viktor turned to her, his hard features softening the moment his eyes met hers. He knelt beside the bed and took her small hands in his. "I have to go for a few hours, little one. This attack cannot go unanswered. If I show weakness now, the entire syndicate will crumble." He brushed a gentle kiss on her forehead. "The tower is on complete lockdown. Biometric security. No one in or out without my direct approval. You are completely safe here." He motioned toward the doorway, where a tall, serious-looking man in a tailored black suit waited. "This is Lucas. He is my most trusted captain. He will personally watch over you while I'm gone. You have nothing to fear." Lucas nodded respectfully. "I'll guard her with my life, boss." Viktor lingered for a long moment, his hand resting on Sophia's head. The conflict in his eyes was clear. The ruthless Don needed to answer the attack, but the father desperately wanted to stay. "I'll be back before you wake up," he promised, voice low and intense. "Sleep well, Sophia. Dream of your mother." With one last lingering look, Viktor grabbed his coat and strode out, Marco and several armed men falling in behind him. The heavy reinforced doors of the penthouse sealed shut with a solid thud, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Sophia lay back in bed, staring at the ceiling. The vast penthouse suddenly felt too big, too empty. She could hear the faint hum of the city far below, and the occasional low murmur of guards outside. The main doors. Lucas stood near the entrance, hands clasped in front of him. At first, he seemed professional and calm, but as the minutes stretched into an hour, Sophia's heightened instincts, sharpened by years on the streets, began picking up small details. His breathing was slightly too fast. There was a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead, despite the perfectly controlled temperature. And when he thought she wasn't looking, his eyes darted toward the elevator, with clear nervousness. "You don't have to stand there the whole time," Sophia said softly, testing him. "I'm just going to sleep." Lucas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Orders are orders, little miss. Boss wants you protected at all costs." He moved closer to her bedroom doorway, his footsteps too deliberate. Sophia pretended to close her eyes, but her ears stayed sharp. She heard the faint metallic click of him checking his weapon, followed by the quiet rustle of a phone being pulled from his pocket. A whispered conversation drifted to her ears. "See, yes, she's here. The girl is real. Viktor's daughter. He's gone to the docks. This is the perfect window. 3 million, and territory in Brooklyn, right? I'll open the service elevator from inside. Just be ready." Sophia's heart began to pound. The man her father trusted most was a traitor. She kept her breathing steady, pretending to sleep while her mind raced. The broken porcelain doll lay beside her pillow, a silent witness. The same streets that had taught her to survive had also taught her one unbreakable rule: trust no one completely, not even the man who cried for you. As Lucas ended the call and slowly approached her room, his footsteps heavy with betrayal, Sophia's small hand tightened around the doll. The golden cage had just been opened from within. Lucas stepped into the bedroom, the soft glow from the city lights casting long shadows across his face. His hand rested on the grip of a silenced pistol, tucked at his side. The friendly protector from earlier had vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating predator. "Poor little orphan," he muttered under his breath. "Viktor really thought keeping you hidden would save you. Pathetic." Sophia remained perfectly still under the covers, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. Every muscle in her small body was coiled like a spring. Years on the streets had taught her more than just survival. They had taught her how to wait for the perfect moment. Lucas leaned over the bed. "Wake up, princess. The Rossis have questions about your father's accounts, and you're going to help me deliver the answers." In one fluid motion, Sophia exploded upward. Her small hand shot out, fingers jabbing precisely into the nerve cluster at the base of Lucas's throat. A move she had practiced hundreds of times in abandoned warehouses under the guidance of a grizzled ex-military homeless veteran she once protected. Lucas choked, eyes bulging in shock. Before he could recover, Sophia rolled off the bed, grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the nightstand, and swung it with surprising force into his knee. The crack echoed through the room. He dropped with a strangled grunt. The pistol clattered to the floor. "You, little bitch," he gasped, reaching for her. Sophia was faster. She snatched the fallen gun, but instead of pointing it at him, she dismantled the magazine with practiced fingers and tossed the pieces across the room, exactly as the old veteran had taught her. "No child should hold a loaded weapon," he used to say, "but knowing how to make one useless could save your life." Lucas lunged at her, but she was already moving. She darted behind the heavy velvet curtains, using the environment she had memorized over the past days. As he ripped the fabric aside, she drove her elbow into his solar plexus and followed with a sharp kick to the same injured knee. He collapsed again, wheezing. "How?" he snarled, staring at the tiny girl who had just systematically dismantled a trained enforcer. "You're just some street rat. Viktor's precious daughter." Sophia stood over him, breathing hard but steady. Her eyes burned with quiet fury. "I stopped being just a street rat the day I realized the world only respects strength," she said, her young voice carrying an edge far beyond her years. "I learned to fight because no one else would fight for me. I learned to listen because information is the only real power when you have nothing else." She picked up the porcelain doll from the bed and held it tightly. "My father thinks he failed me, But the truth is, I survived everything the world threw at me without him, and I did it, while the Rossis, and men like you, hunted us both." Lucas laughed bitterly, still clutching his knee. "You think this changes anything? The Rossis are already on their way up. I opened the service elevator. You're just a bargaining chip." Sophia tilted her head, a small, dangerous smile touching her lips, the same smile her father wore when he passed judgment. "Then they'll learn the same lesson you're learning right now," she whispered. "I'm not a bargaining chip. I'm the reason Viktor Draven will tear your entire world apart." At that exact moment, the reinforced penthouse doors exploded inward with a deafening crash. Viktor stormed through the smoke and debris, suit jacket torn and stained with blood, eyes blazing with murderous rage. Marco and a squad of loyal men flooded in behind him, weapons raised. They had realized the dock attack was a diversion and raced back, but the scene that greeted them stopped everyone cold. Lucas was on the ground, broken and defeated. And standing over him, calm and unafraid, was 8-year-old Sophia, the fragile orphan they had, all underestimated, holding the broken doll, like a queen holding a scepter. Viktor's gun lowered slowly. The raw fury on his face melted into something deeper, awe, pride, and a love so fierce it was almost terrifying. "Sophia," he breathed. She looked up at him, eyes steady despite everything. "He betrayed you," she said simply, "but I handled it." The king of the underworld stared at his daughter, the child he had thought needed protecting, and for the second time in days, felt his world shift on its axis. The helpless little girl he had cried for was a warrior forged in fire. Viktor Draven stood frozen in the shattered doorway, blood still dripping from a graze on his arm. The scene before him defied everything he believed. His 8-year-old daughter, the fragile orphan he had sworn to protect, stood triumphantly over his treacherous captain, calm and composed, as if she had done this 100 times before. "Sophia," he whispered, lowering his weapon completely. Lucas tried to crawl away, but Marco's boot slammed down on his back, pinning him mercilessly to the floor. Viktor crossed the room in 3 powerful strides and dropped to his knees in front of Sophia, for the second time. This time, there was no shock of recognition, only profound, soul-deep reverence. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could feel his heart hammering against her small frame. "I failed you again," he said, voice breaking. "I left you alone. I trusted the wrong man. Sophia pulled back slightly and placed her small hands on his scarred cheeks, forcing him to look at her. "You didn't fail," she said firmly. "You came back, and I protected myself, just like you would have." Tears streamed down Viktor's face as he stared at this extraordinary child. The broken porcelain doll was still clutched in her hand, the symbol of everything he had lost, and miraculously regained. "I spent 10 years thinking I was protecting a helpless little girl from my darkness," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. "But you were never helpless. You were waiting, surviving, becoming stronger than I ever imagined." He pressed his forehead against hers, the ruthless mafia king completely humbled before his daughter. "I'm so proud of you, Sophia. Your mother would be prouder than words can say." Marco hauled Lucas to his feet roughly. "What do we do with this traitor, boss?" Viktor rose slowly, keeping one protective arm around Sophia's shoulders, his expression transformed back into the cold, merciless Don the underworld feared. "Take him to the basement. Keep him alive until he tells us exactly where the Rossi leadership is hiding tonight. Then, make an example of him." As Marco dragged the struggling traitor away, Viktor turned back to Sophia. He knelt one final time, taking both her hands in his. "Vincent Rossi dies tonight," he vowed, voice vibrating with lethal promise. "Every warehouse, every safe house, every soldier who carries his blood will burn before sunrise. No one threatens my family and lives." Sophia looked up at him, her young eyes reflecting the same unyielding strength. "I know," she whispered, "and when the ashes settle, we do this together. I don't want to be protected in a cage anymore. I want to stand beside you." Viktor's breath caught. For a moment, the weight of the empire felt lighter. He had found not just his daughter, but a true heir, someone who understood both the light and the darkness. He pulled her close again, sealing the moment with a fierce, protective embrace. The penthouse lay in ruins around them. Broken doors, scattered glass, and the faint scent of gunpowder. But in that destruction, something unbreakable had been forged. A father and daughter reunited. A king and his future queen. New York City had no idea what was coming. The Draven Syndicate was no longer just an empire of fear and power. It had become a family forged in blood, survival, and unbreakable loyalty. The first light of dawn painted the Manhattan skyline in hues of gold and crimson. As Viktor and Crimson, Sophia, stood together on the terrace. Below them, the city stirred, unaware that the balance of power in its underworld had shifted forever. The Rossi family's empire was crumbling. Warehouses burned, leaders eliminated, and their legacy reduced to ashes. Viktor rested his hand gently on Sophia's shoulder. The broken porcelain doll, now carefully repaired and placed on a pedestal inside, as a symbol of their bond. For the first time in a decade, the ruthless mafia king felt something close to peace. "You changed everything," he said softly. "The moment you handed me that doll, you brought me to my knees and gave me a reason to stand taller than ever before." Sophia leaned against him, a small but genuine smile on her face. "We're family now, real family." "Yes," Viktor replied, his voice filled with quiet strength. "And together, no one will ever break us again." In the days that followed, the streets whispered of the Draven king and the orphan girl who had tamed his darkness. A new era had begun, one built not just on power, but on unbreakable loyalty and love. If you were moved by Sophia's incredible strength and Viktor's powerful redemption, don't forget to hit that like button. We love bringing you these emotional, twist-filled stories of family, survival, and vengeance. What should happen next in their journey? Drop your ideas in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter in the Khan Shadows. Until next time, stay strong, even when the world tries to break you.